What I'm talking about is when I was 9 years old, I went up to my father, and my father was strange for a Japanese. He was 6'4" and 220 pounds. He's a rather large man. I am the smallest male in my family, out of all the family. And I went up to my dad and I say, "Hey, Dad, I finally figured out what I want to do for the rest of my life and what I wanted to be." I said, "I just want to be rich." He says, "Okay." I said, "So Dad, how do I become rich?" And he says, "What the rich know how to do is they know how to make money." I said, "Good." So I ran off and I got my friend Michael, and he was my first business partner at age 9. We were both in school together. And we set out to make money. And our first business venture, what we did was we went around our neighborhood in Hawaii and we collected, you know what, do you have the brand Crest toothpaste out here by any chance? It was Crest toothpaste back in the 1950s. And in those days, the toothpaste tube was made out of lead. So Michael and I would run around and we'd collect all these toothpastes. We'd go to our neighbors, knock on their doors and say, "Would you mind saving your empty toothpaste tube?" And they go, "Sure," you know. And one day my mother comes home and there's this box next to her washing machine full of these ugly-looking toothpaste tubes. And she's wondering what he and I, my first business venture, were up to. So one day my dad comes driving up with one of his school teacher friends, and they find me out there with this fire going, and Michael and I are melting down the lead. And the dad and his friend come over and they look at what are we doing? He says, "What are you boys doing here?" And what we had done, we had taken plaster of Paris and we had put U.S. coins in there. So we're pouring it and popping out, and I had $50, silver quarters, you know, made out of lead. And my father says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Doing what you told us. We're making money." And his friend just started laughing and says, "Leave the boy alone. You might have a talent here, you know." And so I found out at a very early age what the word counterfeiting meant. And so I was very confused. You know, I said, "Dad, I still want to be a rich man. How do I make money?" And my dad looked at me and says, "Number one, there's 2 reasons, don't ask me. Number one is I'm a school teacher. And school teachers don't know how to make money. Number 2, I'm Japanese. Japanese don't know how to make money." He says, "Why don't you ask Michael's father? He knows how to make money. He's Chinese." So Michael and I ran off and went to see his dad. And his dad was Chinese, and he began to teach Michael and I the art of making money. So for those of you who are Chinese in the audience, what I'm about to tell you, you probably already heard from your parents. So as I grew older, it got really difficult in my family. Because my dad, being a school teacher, would say, you know, "Be good, study hard." And I'd say, "Why?" He said, "So you can get good grades." I said, "Why?" "So you can find a good job." I said, "Okay, why?" And he says, "So you can find a good company to work for." And then I'd go across town and talk to Michael's dad, and all he would say to me, he says, "You don't want a good company to work for. You want to study hard to find out how to buy a company and sell it." And it really caused a conflict in me. If you can imagine me being 17 years old, sitting in high school, and it was true, I flunked out twice, not once, but twice, because I was bored. And every time the teacher tried to threaten me, say, "You're not applying yourself, you don't have good grades, blah, blah, blah." I said, "What for?" She says, "So you can get a good job." I said, "Well, I don't need a good job, because I'm going to buy and sell companies." So she said, "Well, a company would never hire somebody like you." I said, "Ooh, that might be a good company to buy." She says, "Well, I would never work for a man like you." And I said, "Don't worry, love, we wouldn't hire you anyway." That's when I was thrown out the second time. So I had a different educational background, and it was tough, like I said, with my 2 dads. Now the reason I bring this up is how many people here realize that America is in fairly big financial trouble right now? How many people realize that? Good. For those who do not know that, one of the main reasons I'm here talking to you today is as your great country goes up and my great country starts coming down, there are lessons for all of us to learn here. And one of the biggest lessons to learn here is that since 1980, 43 million jobs have been lost in America. That's twice your population. I don't mean people were retrenched or fired. It's the jobs are gone. Do you understand that? They're gone. When the factories left, whole towns were shut down. 43 million jobs. And when they say the unemployment rate in America is less than 6%, they're lying with statistics. The way it really works is that if somebody has not found a job for over 6 months, they don't count them in the unemployment. They're lost. And so what we have are factory towns like Camden, New Jersey, East St. Louis, Missouri. And what happened to them is they have an 80 to 90% unemployment rate. So when you hear about the crime, it is because there's no jobs. And nobody really minded as long as it was only African American people. But the spread kept coming. And now many people realize they're letting go highly educated people right now. Many people realize that right now. There are people with PhDs who can't find work. My next door neighbor is an international banker. He's 55 years old. He has 2 children. One 16, one 8. His bank merged with another bank, and all of a sudden, he doesn't have a job. Now, the reason I'm talking to you today is because I do not take the subject of money lightly. My dad did, my real dad. And the thing, no, he always, being a school teacher, he said, well, we're not interested in money. We're school teachers. And then what happened in 1970, my dad got retrenched. What he did was he ran against the governor of the state of Hawaii, and he lost. And the because the governor was his boss. As head of education, the governor was his boss. And the governor says, you will never work in this state again. So at the age of 50, my father never worked again. And I saw a great tall man go down because all he wanted to do was teach. So that's why I speak on this subject. So the thing that I found out when I talked to my dad in the later years, he says one of the problems with education is that what schools focus on in America, and I apologize, I don't really know your system here, is they focus on a thing called SAT. Is it up there? No. What SAT stands for is Scholastic Aptitude Testing. What is important in education in America is your scholarship. Can you read? Can you write? Can you do mathematics? That's what they count on. If you do really, after about the age 15 or 16, they begin focusing on PAT or professional aptitude tests. Out here, I think they call it streamlining or something like this or whatever it is. They want to find out if you're good at scholarship, will you be a doctor? Or if you're not good at scholarship, will you be a mechanic? And then they start streamlining into professions. And what they never do in the American system is they never teach financial aptitude. And so that's why in America, the biggest problem happening right now is a tremendous gap between the haves and the what? Have-nots. Because financial education is left up to the parents. So a poor parent will teach their children poor attitudes. So the benefit that I had was having my Chinese father teach me financial aptitude. So what I'm going to do is really quickly go over some of the stuff my Chinese father taught me. Not what my Japanese father taught me. And I'll be very quick, and because I was only 9 or 10 years old, my Chinese father had to teach me in very simple diagrams. And those simple diagrams are the main reason today I never have to work for the rest of my life. It was a simple diagrams. And so my dad used to say, well, don't listen to Michael's dad. He never graduated from high school. I said, okay. The man's illiterate. I said, okay. I said, but Dad, the guy's a multi-millionaire. I don't care. And my dad being Michael's dad had about 1,000 employees, had multiple businesses, and my dad had about 1,000 school teachers working for him. So, this is what Michael's dad taught me, and it's just basic financial aptitude. And what my dad would say is Michael's dad's illiterate. The guy couldn't read. You know, my dad was being an intellectual, graduated from university in less than 2 years, top of his class. My dad was a voracious reader, scholarship. He could read 2 to 3 books a week. Michael's dad read nothing a week. But where my dad was literate was in words, but he was illiterate when it came to numbers. And Michael's dad was literate in numbers. Do you get my drift right here? Like, I learned to, also went to school to play the saxophone, and I learned to read music. Well, I'm illiterate when it comes to music, too. I don't use the stuff. So what Michael's dad finally taught me was really simple, and this is very simple diagramming here. Most Americans, I don't know how about here, are financially or numerically illiterate. So this is called an income statement here. And this is called a balance sheet. On this top area right here, you put the words INC for income. Down here you put expenses. This is the way he taught me. Over here you have asset, and over here you have liability. Now, Michael's dad said there was one main reason there were so many people who were poor or struggling financially, and that was they did not understand the definition between asset and liability. They had them confused, including the bankers and accountants. So I will give you my Chinese dad's definition of an asset. He said an asset is something that puts money in your pocket without you working for it. I'll say it again. An asset puts money in your what? Pocket, without you having to do any work. And a liability was something that took money out of your pocket. Now, that's not that tough. Very simple definitions. Or another way he would say it was that if you stopped working, an asset would feed you. And he said a liability would then eat you. That's how simple he taught me this stuff. Now, interestingly enough, as my educated dad, my Japanese dad, he would list over here under an asset his house and his car. And my Chinese dad would list over here his house and his car. Now you know why I'm so confused. And ironically, if you talk to most bankers, which one would they say it is? Asset. And so my Chinese father said, a lot of these people sit around and they're trying to figure out assets and liabilities. And he said the only thing that really counts, that determines whether something is an asset or a liability, is a word called cash flow. If it flowed into your pocket, it was an asset. If it flowed out of your pocket, it was a liability. Very simple. So, at my house, I have an altar to the God of cash flow. I want it flowing in. So, the problem with America today is we have millions and millions of people who are counting assets, counting liabilities, which are really, counting assets, no, even one thing. They're counting liabilities as assets. That's what they're doing. That's pretty simple. Okay. So I will show you then, is cash flow becoming everything? I will show you a couple of diagrams that he would teach me with. And this was teaching us financial literacy. What my Chinese father would say is this. If you look at it, I'll go back a little bit. Is the way it really works here is this. What happens for most people is they get a thing called a job. The income comes in here, and the income flows out. So, most kids, and I'll use US dollars because I'm most familiar with, let's say they have an income of $1,000 a month. The first expense is a thing called rent, and then food, and stereo and CDs and stuff like that. Then after the person gets married, what's the first thing they buy is a house. Now they have a liability or they get a credit card. So the American public starts to go into debt right away. Then they have a thing called kids. Where do kids stack up? Kids are a very big expense. They're not an asset, trust me. They're very expensive items. Okay, so that's how that thing works here. Now, so what Michael's father used to teach me wasn't so much asset and liability, but what he would do is he'd pick up financial statements and he would look for a thing called cash flow. He'd look for the pattern. And he said this, here's a job, cash would come in and cash would go out. And if a person did this over a lifetime, this was the cash flow pattern of somebody who was poor. My Chinese father said, back in 1972, I bought my first condominium. I thought I was hot stuff. I had saved some money. I bought this condominium. I paid $30,000 for it, and I sold it for $48,000. I made $18,000. I thought I was King Tut. So I took that $18,000. I went and bought 3 more condominiums, and I bought them for $20,000 and sold them for $48,000. I was making about $90,000. Meanwhile, I was working for Xerox. And at Xerox, I was being paid $30,000 a year. The main reason I worked for Xerox was I needed the bank to loan me the money. So here's my job. It's paying me $30,000 a month, and over here I'm making $90,000. When my sales manager told me he was going to fire me, I said, don't do me any favors. Because I can make more money in this column here. So then my Chinese father then laughed at me. He says, you're so typical Japanese. He says, you Japanese are terrible. He says, you guys pay retail. Chinese never pay retail. He said, in Hawaii, he says, here they are, a house is worth $100,000. The Japanese come in, they pay $300,000 for it. He says, you guys are not too bright. He says, don't ever pay retail. So Michael's father then taught me to do this. He says, this is the next rule. Those of you want to write it down. This is rule number 3, the secret of the rich. Create investments. Don't buy them. And this thing here then accelerated my wealth pretty much, because I wasn't buying anything, I was just creating them. So I'll give you an example of couple of very simple deals that anybody can do. Is back in 1992, America was in a terrible recession. The bank called me up and says, we got 5 houses. Would you buy them for us? It's for how much? I said, we'll sell them to you at a discount. I said, oh, very good. He says, for $5,000 down per house, over $25,000, I could buy all 5 houses. So this is the way it worked. I bought a house for $30,000. Deep discount because it was in what they call foreclosure. Somebody didn't pay the mortgage on them. I immediately marked the thing up to $60,000 and sell it. At that point, I sell it to the guy that took it from, too. So I'll show you something here. Where was that 30,000 created? It was created in the asset column. Now the big distinction here is this. How long would it take you to save $30,000? It would take a while, wouldn't it? And the reason for that is if you have a job, the income comes in here, what's the first line item expense on expenses? Taxes. In America, they're very high. So by the time somebody's trying to get $30,000 in here, these are called retained earnings or after-tax dollars. That's why most Americans can't make it, and our banks keep telling them, save money. They can't save money because they got too many expensive and too much doodah around here. They can't make it. So I created $30,000 times 5, or $150,000 in here. And what I created then was a thing called a note. And that $150,000, I then take 10% interest on. I don't want them to pay that thing off. Because what is driving annually up here is $15,000 a year into my income column for 30 years. So that's how it was created. It's very simple. It took me about 2 hours to do the whole transaction. I forget what the number comes out to. It's approximately $90,000 times 5. So that's what my Chinese father was saying to me. He says, you create investments, you don't buy them. This is simple. Anybody could have done it. The next thing he taught me to do was this. He said, first, before you buy, is you expand the product. And a little while ago, I bought 80 acres of land for $115,000. Very good land, right next to a booming city. On the corner of the land was a little house here. So I sold the house for $150,000 with 4 acres on it. At that point, I divided up the land into approximately four other pieces. Then I sold each piece for $100,000. This was created again, not in the income column, but in the asset column. So at that point, $400,000 was created. Meanwhile, my neighbor, who's my banker, well, not my banker, my international banker, he's going to me, he says, oh my God, I'm still looking for a job. And this is what the whole thing was talking about, was financial aptitude. There's no more job security. When people are screaming for job security, what they're really looking for is financial security today. So the faster I recommend learning it right now is because your future will be more stable. The last deal I did, and this, for those of you who like the stock market, there's a thing called IPOs. IPOs are initial public offerings when you take a stock public. Stock comes out, it goes out at $101.50. Now, it chugs along here. This is where the fundamental trader, technical traders pick it up, and you're kind of hoping it goes to $5 a share. If a mutual fund picks it up, it'll then go to $20 a share. And this is where the broad American public picks up their product. They pick it up in the form of a mutual fund paying full retail for it. It violates my Chinese father's bones. And what he taught me instead to do was pick it up in this area here. And so what I began doing under his tutelage was, you have 5 founders. You create 5 million shares. Price per share, 0 at that moment. You take it to stage 1, you take it up to 10 cents per share. 5 million shares, now there's now 500,000, I think it's 500, didn't do well in math. So that's stage 1. By the time it gets to stage 2, this is where my friends come in. I sell it to them for 50 cents a share. Now they line up all day long to pick it up at 50 cents a share because stage 3 is the IPO. And so a person buying 100,000 shares, they're going to make $100,000 in about a month. And this is why the rich get richer. They operate in this arena here. Right now I'm bringing out a casino stock and a oil and gas company. This is where it's made at very high rates of speed, and then the public picks it up out of here. The other part, for those of you who understand the stock market, everybody gets really upset about a thing called insider trading. It's illegal over here, it's perfectly legal over here. Have I made my point? So there's this guy coming next year under the program. It's called Think and Grow Rich. The message I'd like to leave you with today is that if you really want to make money, the best way to do it is between your ears. Think. Don't work hard. So, as I close, there's a question I'm going to ask you all today.
And the last thing I want to say about this IPO here is this. I know most of my middle class friends, they worry about money. I don't worry about money, I get excited. When you're carrying, just look at the numbers, the multiplication, the leverage on this thing. If I have 1 million shares, which cost me $0, and by the time it hits the IPO, it's worth $1.50, I've made $1.5 million. It hits $5 a share, and we're doing stock splits inside here. We're getting the money back at rapid rates of speed. It comes up here, we make $5 million. Because instead of being worried about money, I get excited about it. It's not hard to do, but they don't teach us in school because they want to teach you to work hard. That's why I wrote my book. So this is my question as I close, is what is your winning formula? And what I mean by that is this. My dad, when he was downsized in 1970, his winning formula, being a school teacher, was go to school, study hard, look for a nice, safe, secure job. In America today, we have millions of people being downsized, and the world has changed, but what hasn't changed? What hasn't changed is their winning formula. Their idea, and what a winning formula is each and every one of us has a winning formula. My winning formula was don't do what everybody else is doing. That's part of my winning formula. Some of you out there, your winning formula is be good, do as you're told, take orders. Because that's how you survive. And a winning formula is each and every one of us has a way of thinking that we know we can survive from. That it is our best chance of making a success of ourselves. And unfortunately, here I am. I'm showing you some of these things here. This whole process takes 3 months. Puts $2 or $3 million in my pocket. What blocks most people from this thing called achievement is not that they don't want to achieve, is they're not willing to let go of their winning formula. Some of you will still go home and go back to work. You got to look at your formula. Is the formula like a recipe? Is it delivering all the money, happiness, fun, excitement you want? Or is your formula obsolete? The saddest thing about my dad, I didn't realize until after he died, about 1992, was he couldn't change his winning formula. Does that make any sense, you guys here? He was just doing what he knew best he could survive on, which was go to school, get a job. That's all he knew. Work hard. And if you want to be successful today, you've got to be willing to change your winning formula. Because things are changing rapidly here too, right? And if you hang on to your old winning formula, you ain't going to get there. And so all I'm saying here is this. I'm not saying follow my formula. This is my formula. But some of you going like, oh, I like that. I just showed you how you can make $1 million every other month very easily. But what's going to prevent people from doing that is the winning formula, your winning formula. So what happens is, I show you guys this, some of you will go home, they'll say, oh, look at this. And the reason that upsets me is at that point you'll see it, but you won't do anything about it. I don't care if you do what I do. It's like Brian yesterday, his information, you go, oh, great information, but you don't do anything about it. To be an achiever, you've got to do something. Do that make sense, you guys here? You've got to use it. And what stops people is their winning formula. It's a formula that's obsolete right now. So, one of the things I talk about in other company, and it's a risk, is that there are people like Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, and those guys, and what they were great teachers. Now, the problem with life is, after the teachers come they don't do what they're talking about. They tell you what they're talking about. Do that make sense, you guys here? They can't do it. They're like consultants. One of the definitions of consultants I heard was this: a consultant is somebody who can tell you how to have, in 75 different ways, the most erotic sex possible. They can tell you how to do it, but they can't find anybody to do it with. So everything I've told you here is this: is the moment my Chinese dad told me about this formula here, this formula was better than my old formula, buying retail. Do you get what I'm saying? I had to let go of an old formula. Now, it doesn't mean I don't use the old formula. It's like an old pair of golf clubs. You sort of keep them around for your friends to use. But I'd rather have the new golf clubs. I want a new formula. And the reason I bring this up today is this. This is the National Achievers Congress. It is not the National Intellectuals Congress. It is a National Achievers Congress. It is not the National Followers Congress. If you go home and do nothing, and you just talk about what you've learned, then you have wasted your time and money. Do you hear what I'm saying? You must take action. Achievers take action. This way, when I learned this stuff, I made lots of mistakes. I lost lots of money. God knows. So please don't be preachers. Become teachers. The future of this country lies in this room right now. And what a teacher does is they lead by example, not by words. And my father hung around a lot of college professors, and there were lots of words. I hate to say it, I mean, I liked them a lot, but they could tell me how to do something, but they couldn't do it themselves. And that is the demarcation. So, what Michael's father used to teach me wasn't so much asset and liability, but what he would do is he'd pick up financial statements and he would look for a thing called cash flow. He'd look for the pattern. And he said this: here's a job, cash would come in and cash would go out. And if a person did this over a lifetime, this was the cash flow pattern of somebody who was poor. That was a poor person's cash flow pattern. Money comes in and money goes out. It's not so much what you do over a day, but what you do over a lifetime. Then the next pattern was this. You get a job, cash comes in. Goes into the liability column, paying for a mortgage, the BMW, the boat, the summer house, the trip to Disneyland. And it goes out as expense. And this here is the cash flow pattern of the great middle class. So take a look at it right now. Those are broad generalities. Which pattern do you fit into? Now, I'd like to take some time to go into the cash flow pattern of the middle class and show you what's happening, because they're the most interesting. I have a friend in San Diego. My Chinese father would say to him, he was California rich. And what California rich meant was the guy he was in real estate, he had very high income. But every time he got money from commissions, did he go into the asset column or the liability column? He'd go liability. Guy has $1 million house. He has a BMW. He has a Mercedes. He has a Jeep. He has Armani shirts. His wife has lots of jewelry. And they go out to dinner a lot. Do you know people like this? And then what happened being in the California real estate market, so this guy here like this is the pattern. It looks like this all day long. Now, I go to the gym a lot, and what this looks like to me of the great middle class is looks like one of those treadmills. They get up every day, they go to work, they go to work, they go to work. They're working hard, but going what? Nowhere. because their liabilities keep them at work. They never get ahead. Then what happens is, all of a sudden, this happened to my friend, is the California real estate market tanked. In other words, he lost this. Now, just because you have no income, does a bank care that you can't pay your liabilities? Do they? No. So right now I'm waiting for him because I want to pick up his BMW at 5 cents on the dollar. What's that song? That's what friends are for. So I see, the reason I'm concerned about this is I see it already here in KL. As your income goes up, I see people at that mall buying all the Rolexes, which I have one, $3,500 Brioni suits, all the good stuff. Those are not called assets, those are called doodads. And the worst part about it is they buy them on credit. So that's why the great American middle class is in such great trouble right now. They lose their job and they're shot. Now, the last pattern I will show you here is this. So we have the poor, the middle class, and this is the cash flow pattern of the rich. Do you notice a difference? The reason I don't work is because I have spent the last few years of my life buying assets, not doodads. And the irony of it is as my stock market moves up, my real estate market moves up, this sucker just gets richer and richer and richer. It actually goes like this and like this, but it spins right inside. So, what's happening in America, and I'll bring this up as I wrote my book, You Want to Be Rich and Happy, Don't Go to School, is finally, and I wrote that in 1990, is they're finally attacking the school system. Because the school system is not preparing kids for real life. What's happening in America today is there's no such thing as job security. 50% right now of the people of my age, the baby boomer generation, 50% have no medical insurance and have no pension plan. That in 15 years, I turned 49 yesterday, in 15 years, age 65, most of my classmates will have to keep working because they have got nothing, and the problem is that there's no jobs for them. And our school system still teaches people to be good, do as you're told, look for a nice, safe, secure job. And people say, oh, don't worry, I'm a doctor. What's happening for the very first time is in this thing, professionals feel the heat. It is now spread. Doctors are losing their jobs. Engineers are losing their jobs. CPAs are losing their jobs. MBAs are losing their jobs. It is hemorrhaging it right now at high speed. And they're making less and less money if they take a job. So nobody is safe right now. The other thing that's happening in America, as I said, as you come up, learn from as we go down here, is a thing called virtual corporations. And what a virtual corporation is a company without an employee in it. In America today, we don't want employees because they're not assets, they are liabilities. And the reason for that is if you fire them because they're so desperate, they sue you. And it's funny at one level, but it cost me $12,000 to let somebody go. They weren't worth that much. And that's what's happening right now. So people are saying, we don't want employees, we want temporaries. So they come on, and our schools still don't teach them any financial aptitude. So, I will give you today some rules or some secrets that my Chinese father gave me about how to be rich. And rule number one is this. This is number one. And these made the differences in my life. The biggest secret of all is this. And I think this starts the difference. MC stands for middle class. The poor and the middle class work for money. They go to school so they can find a nice, safe, secure job so they can get paid. And what my Chinese father did was train me completely different. He said, And that's the difference. It is a defining difference. Same as when one father said to me, find a good job or a good company, and the other father says, find a good company to buy. And this will begin to start to make the difference here. I will give you some stats for those of you. How many people remember the DISC from yesterday with, what's his name? But anyway, Brian, yes, Brian. This is in 1990. This is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. At age 65 in 1990, and these are Americans who are the World War II generation. These are the stats for them. This is my father's generation. Out of 100 people at age 65, 1990, 25 are dead. So 1 out of 4 has died. 51, or the gross majority, have incomes of $6,000. And these are people who grew up during the biggest boom years of America, the same as you guys are right now, the biggest boom years. 20 out of 100 have incomes between $6,000 and $35,000. 3 have incomes over $35,000. And only 1 is rich. That is not a very good stat for at one time the richest country in the world. So what I'm going to be doing here is basically giving you the attitude or ideas of this one person. So, rule number 2. This is what Michael's father taught me. The secret of the rich. How many people, mind your own business, how many people know who a gentleman named Ray Kroc was? Okay. For those who do not know, Ray Kroc was a man who founded a company called McDonald's. Now, my good friend Keith Cunningham was in the MBA program at the University of Texas, and Ray Kroc came to speak to the MBA program. And Ray Kroc stood up in front of some of the brightest young minds in the 60s, actually the 70s, and he said to the MBA class, he said, ladies and gentlemen, what business am I in? And all the students just laughed. And what they laughed about, and suddenly somebody raised their hands up, obviously you're in hamburgers. And Ray Kroc says, no, I am not in the business of hamburgers. My business is real estate. The only reason Ray Kroc created franchises was that so somebody would buy the franchise, but he owned the property. And one of the biggest shortcomings I find with many Americans is that this is the big mistake they make here. This is income. What Ray Kroc was saying was this to the class. He says, this here is not my business. This is my profession. And so what many people do is when I ask my next door neighbor, the international banker, I said, what business are you in? He says, I'm a banker. That's not his business. That's his profession. And the reason he's having a hard time right now is that what Michael's father taught me was that this is your business. And what he meant by your business, whether you're an employee or not, that has got to be your business. It has got to be your name on it. If you work, I used to work for Xerox. Was Xerox my business? Was it? No. It belonged to the shareholders. And so at a very early age, what I began to do was stack this one. So my profession was sales, the same as Ray Kroc, but my business was real estate. And so I'm just asking you right now is, as you're in these boom years, never forget to take care of your business. Don't mind somebody else's business. You've got to take care of yourself. Does that make sense, you guys here? Hello? Yeah, you've got to take care of yourself. If you don't, nobody else will. Because what's happened in America, and I'm in the stock market, is when IBM announces 80,000 people laid off, does the price of the stock go up or down? Up. That should tell people who are employees something. Now, 2 weeks ago, the stock market plummeted. Why did it plummet? Because they announced employment was going where? Up. And obviously, in the world, there are two different kinds of people. The rich and those who aren't rich. And if you're going to make it, my point of view is this, you may as well make it. Take care of your own business. All of us are employees. Right now, my profession is public speaker, but my business is still what? Real estate. It is my business. The reason it's my business, it's got my name on it. Today, this belongs to Richard Tan. I work for you and Richard Tan. I am an employee today. We're all employees. But you must mind your own business. So, I will go into what assets are for those, some of you know, some of you don't know, is that there are different kinds of assets. And these are some of the more common ones. Like I said, my favorite is real estate. Others are stocks, bonds, intellectual property. Intellectual property are things like books. Like Andrew was just up here, his book is one of his assets. 1 million copies. It's working for him while he sleeps. Mutual funds and businesses. Now, the thing that my Chinese father said to me is this. He says, there are people who own businesses and people who own a job. And he said the reason when you know you own a job is much like a doctor or an accountant. In other words, they are not free. They must do the work. If you don't have to work, you then own a business. My next door neighbor, what he does is he owns businesses. When I ask him what his profession is, he says, I am a business operator. That's his profession. But his business is business. What he has is he owns 12 car washes. 10 years ago, he was broke. Today, he owns 12 car washes. He takes a paycheck from each one of those car washes of $20,000 a month per car wash. In other words, his income over here is $240,000 US a month, whether he works or not. That's why he gets rich. He's also my neighbor. Interestingly enough, both he and I do not live in big houses. We live in very small houses. The reason is we don't like large liabilities. And that is a demarcation of whether you're an achiever or not. Do you take action? Are you willing to make mistakes? Because I'm going to say something right now as you guys climb. Because I'm sure right on the heels of your boom are countries called Cambodia and Vietnam. Is that correct? They're on your heels right now. And when those cranes, all the construction, those cranes come down, there's going to be unemployment again. I've seen it happen in real estate all the time. So, in today's world, what we are today is we are not an information society anymore. Contrary to what people say, what we are is a learning society. And your success in the future is not how much information you have. People will not care what you know. What they want to know is how fast can you learn. Do you hear what I'm saying? Hello? It's what? They don't care. I mean, my next door neighbor has an MBA from Harvard. I said, big deal. Show me your financial statement. So the key to the future is how fast do you learn? How fast can you drop your old winning formula and adopt a new winning formula? That will be the question. If you go home today and you just talk about this stuff, then you're a preacher. You've got to take action. Do I make sense, you guys, here? The key to your competitive edge is how fast can you lead? How fast can I adopt a new idea? As soon as my Chinese father showed me how I could make $1 million faster, did I argue? No. I said, tell me more, man. I met this one friend of mine. She has been working 50 years. She is so proud. Man, bless her soul. She's got $500,000 in savings, earning 5%. Oh, Jesus. I said, I can make that in a day. But she wants to hang on to her what? Winning formula. Because that's what she was taught. That is her winning formula. And what prevents, I'll say it again and again, what prevents people from success is they hang on to an old formula and do not adopt a new formula. Have I made my point today? So, thank you. So the last secret, and this was both dads taught me, my Chinese dad and my Japanese dad, is the key to their achievement for both of them. And they were very, very, very successful men. I forgot the number. Is it number 4 or 5? 4. Number 4. Make mistakes. Because when you go to school, if you make too many mistakes, what do? They punish you. You get thrown out. They call you stupid. I've been called stupid many times in my life. Now, this here is the big secret of achievers. Achievers are willing to take risks. Intellectuals aren't. They want to study it forever. Ever seen a baby learn how to walk? The baby, stands up and falls down, and stands up and falls down. Then what do? Stand up again. Does the baby go, oh, I'm a failure? Babies don't know that. It's only until they get intelligent that somebody tells them. And the only reason I'm in front of you today is I've made more mistakes. It's not because I was more intelligent. Thank you. I've made horrendous mistakes. And I had 2 fathers that said that's the only way to go. So I'll give you 2 more tips, and then I'll go into the last part of it. Is my rich dad said this. He says, never say I can't afford something. Okay, that's one tip. Another one is this. Forgot what it was. Oh. Watch out for your friends. Choose your friends carefully. Because as you achieve, how many people have met people that want to hold you back? They get jealous of your success. I found a deal the other day where the government was going to pay me 16% interest on my money secured by real estate. Now, did I go and question the government? No, I took the deal. If I got screwed, no big deal. But if I didn't, I got 16%. My neighbor gets 4% on his money, and he came and gave me every reason why I wouldn't get that deal. He's talking about it. I'm putting 16% in my pocket. But every day he comes up to me and says, "You don't lose money." I said, "So what?" And because in his world, it's not okay to make what? Mistakes. Okay? Oh, the last thing, for those of you who are the Imelda Marcuses of the world, who love the Rolex watches, which I do, and the Brioni suits, and the Ferragamo shoes, I love it. I am Imelda Marcos in the male form. What my Chinese dad taught me was this. Like the other day, about 6 months ago, I wanted a new Porsche convertible. Now, I love that car. But if I bought the Porsche convertible, it would be a liability. Because I have to pay, even if I paid cash for it, it's a liability. I've got to pay for it. I've got to put gas in it and all this. So the rule of thumb he taught me was this, is you buy an asset first, and your asset pays for your liability. Does that make sense, you guys here? That's the way, so I'm wearing all this stuff, I'm not being a hypocrite. My tenants are paying for this right now. So I'll close with this, about making mistakes. I've been bankrupt twice. You ever gone skydiving without a parachute? So I lost everything in 1979. I felt terrible for a year. And I was back in action by 83 and went bankrupt again in 84. It's no different than the baby. Each time I got smarter. Do you get what I'm saying? I learned from my what? Mistakes. And if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn anything. The people who are going to go home and say, my winning formula is play it safe, not make mistakes, that is not the winning formula of an achiever. And what's really hard being Asian is, I tell you what, when I went bankrupt, I lost face. You guys know what I'm talking about. White guys, they go, oh, no big deal, you know. And what holds us Asians back is we got to look good. We're going broke, but we're looking good. So in 1984, after losing more face, I had to leave Hawaii. You know, they were after me. I wind up in California. My wife and I are driving this beat-up brown Toyota Celica. We were homeless in 1984. Homeless. We're sleeping in the car in wintertime. Man, it's cold. It's cold. We had no money. You know, we'd make a few bucks and put some gas, eat a little bit. And I still remember this one night, you know, our credit cards were charged to the max. I lost another $1 million. A learning experience. And I went to being the true hero, I said, you go to the desk. I can't afford, you know, I don't want to lose face here. So she goes to the desk and puts this credit card, and the guy didn't check it. You know what I mean? Because every place I checked it, it would come up, arrest this man. So the desk clerk didn't check it. And I went, oh my, we're not homeless tonight. And I still remember to this day, in 1984, sitting in the Sixpence Motel in Del Mar, California, huddling from the cold. An utter, utter failure. Hugging my wife. As a man, I can't even provide for my wife. We're just hugging and I'm crying, you know, going, how could I screw up so badly? And she says, don't worry, I'll go and buy some Kentucky Fried Chicken. You'll feel better. So I still remember sitting there eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, taking a shower after 5 days of not bathing, watching the TV set, you know, going like this. I owe bills up to my eyeballs. People will not talk to me anymore. And it's only one thing that pulled me out. And I had an English teacher who taught me Shakespeare. And she did not teach me Shakespeare because she wanted me to memorize the stuff. She wanted me to learn from that great writer. And I memorized this poem. And as I sat there huddling with my wife, an utter failure, bankrupt again, another big mistake. The only thing that pulled me out was this poem. And it goes like this, by William Shakespeare. You will be what you will to be. I'll say that again. You will be what you will to be. It has nothing to do with the economy. It has nothing to do with the grandiose growing of Malaysia here. It's up to you. I wanted to be a rich man. The only thing that pulled me out was my will to be a rich man. And I don't care if you want to be the best actor, the best athlete, the best mother, the best salesman. The only person, when you look in the mirror, is you. It is your will. Nobody else's. You look in that mirror and you go, it's me. So this poem, I'm sitting on that bed, hugging my wife, crying my eyes out. And I said, the only thing that's going to pull me out of this mess is my will, because I wanted to quit. I wanted to give up. And the poem goes like this. You will be what you will to be. Let failure find its false content in that poor word environment. But spirit scorns it and is free. It conquers time. It masters space. It cows that boastful trickster chance and bids that tyrant circumstance uncrowned to fill a servant's place. The human will, that force unseen, the offspring of a deathless soul, can hew its way to any goal, though walls of granite intervene. Be not impatient in delay, but wait as one who understands. When spirit rises and commands, the gods are ready to obey. Thank you very much.